mic test. A. Alrighty. Um, what it do, Buckaroos? Welcome to my favorite NBA 2K franchise. Now, what I mean by that is this is a thing I did in Madden, where I took all my favorite players at each position, I made a team, and then I quickly went through the roster, talked about who was there, why they were there, etc., etc. And I'm going to do the same thing in NBA 2K today. I had a few different ways of thinking about doing this. Originally, I was thinking about doing my top 10 favorite players of all time. Realized that some of my favorite players weren't even in the game, and I wasn't really sure how I was going to go about making them or copying them. So I said, screw it. We're just going to start off with my. When you do a draft, uh, as you can see in the Central Division, which, speaking of divisions, real quick, something I find stupid. How come in the East there's the Central, Southeast, and Atlantic? I understand the Atlantic, it's because of the parameter towards the ocean. And then in the Western, there's the Northwest, Southwest, Pacific. Again, Pacific, ocean. But the Central and Pacific, okay, fine, whatever. But why is it Southwest, Northwest, Southeast, Atlantic? Why isn't it? Why isn't it Northeast? I feel like that'd be easier to remember. The fact that that one's Central, okay, I get it. You're more like Central America, more so, because Wisconsin's a little more to the left. It's not really full on Central, but it's more central as in like middle. Pacific, I mean, I guess most teams are in California, so fair enough, I guess. But still a little dumb to me, the naming, but it is what it is. But if you look in the Central Division, you'll see that there's a second Milwaukee Bucks. Basically, I'm being my favorite team. That's what the logo was when I first became a Bucks fan. So, and I'm gonna create my favorite team with my favorite players, and I'm gonna pick my top 14 favorite players in the NBA and put them on a team together and see if they win a championship. If they don't, then we'll make a part two video where we do a rebuild with the team. Um, but yeah, so basically that's the goal. And originally I was thinking about doing my favorite players of all time, but again, some of them weren't in the game, and I wasn't sure how I was going to get them. So I'm just going to talk about who was going to be on the team. I know I could have just added like some of the all-time teams to get some of my favorite players, but I'm just going to talk about who would have been on it, and if that is the case, if I'm able to find out how to get all the players, then eventually down the line I'll just make another franchise with my all-time favorite players who aren't currently in the league. But we're gonna make a draft of 14 players and draft who I would consider my top 14 favorite players. Um, I originally was gonna just do my top 10, but this is just another way to do it. Um, yeah, and then there's gonna be a few little side things I do in the video too, where I'm gonna talk about how I feel about all the NBA teams and my personal connections with them, because this is my favorite franchise. So I'm gonna talk while the game's simming. I'll just go down the list of teams and talk about how my relationship with the teams have been over the years as an NBA fan, because basketball was the first sport I got into. And being a basketball lover, I've definitely changed throughout the years. I went from being a guy who focused on every team, whether I loved them or not, just because I wanted to know what every team was up to, who could get traded where, all that kind of stuff. But I changed a little bit as a person now. As my life has gone a little less towards sports and a little bit more towards focusing on career and stuff. Um, I've started to learn to say it's okay to have the teams I love and the teams I don't care as much about. And because there's millions of sports fans throughout the world, and the NBA has a large following of people who love these teams. Each team has at least one diehard fan somewhere. So it's not like my fandom really matters. But anywho, so I'm going to talk about the players who I'm going to draft, and then I'm going to draft them. I'm going to go into a quick little story about why they're one of my favorite players, and then we'll get into that. But just to give you an example of the kind of stories I would tell, well, we're simulating later, I'll talk about my relation with one or two teams at the moment. Like, for an example, I would break them into tiers. The top tier would be teams I love, teams I would consider myself a legitimate fan of no matter what happens to that team. Then I have a tier called care for. It's like teams that I care about, but I wouldn't consider them my favorite, or I wouldn't even necessarily say I'm a fan, but I wouldn't say that I don't care about the team at all. Like, I do love the team in a way. It's just not enough to consider myself a true fan. Like, I wouldn't even consider that being a casual. I would say I like the team. I want to know what they're doing, but they're just not my favorite. It's like they're interesting, but I don't love them. And then there's the teams that I don't really care about. And then I guess you can go one step further and say there's a tier where there's only one team in it, where there's a team I just genuinely despise. But I only feel that way about one NBA team, to be honest with you. So for an example, one of the teams I genuinely love is the Milwaukee Bucks. That's why there's two of them. I'm going back to when I first fell in love with the Milwaukee Bucks as a fan. I debated doing the purple logo because I like the purple logo too. But I was born in 2001. It's not like I was watching that Milwaukee Bucks team that had, Gary Payton. I wasn't watching that Bucks team, young Ray Allen. That's not the Bucks team I was watching. I was watching the Michael Redd Bucks. I was watching the Andrew Bogut Bucks. I was watching the Brandon Jennings Bucks. I was watching the Charlie Bell off the bench Bucks. That's the Bucks I was watching. I was watching the Jabari Parker see if he could become a pseudo Paul Pierce type player Bucks. So I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like I know everything about every team's past or anything like that because pre my existence, I don't really care what happened with any organization. And main reason why I feel that way is because I grew up in Massachusetts where a lot of people were Boston fans. And a lot of people talk about how successful Boston is as a city and all that stuff. But when I was younger, hearing that philosophy it never made sense to me because apart from like the '07, '08 Celtics, um, like what Celtics regime are you really bragging about? You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, you can win a bunch of championships back in the Bird days and Bill Russell and all that, but you weren't around for any of it. And coming from a guy who first started off watching the Celtics as his first team because they were my hometown team, Kevin Garnett is my favorite player. Well, is second favorite player of all time now, but was my favorite player of all time once upon a time when I first started watching basketball. He'll always be in my top five regardless, maybe even top three. But there was just so many people who would talk about how great the Celtics were and a lot of them were rude to me because I wanted to like other teams. I just didn't like the idea of everyone loving the same team. It got kind of boring, got kind of annoying. I like the idea of some people being a little bit different. And the first team that I chose to be different back in the day, probably in like '08, maybe '09, was the Milwaukee Bucks. Um, I got my dog Buck back in 2008. That was my first dog I ever had. He was a black lab. And honestly, that dog was my best friend. And when I first started watching other basketball teams, the Milwaukee Bucks were one of my favorite teams to rebuild. They were a team where I didn't mind reconstructing their roster. They had cap space. They had everything from a franchise perspective that I loved. The ability to change it, the ability to shape it in my own mind, and the ability to grow. And that's what I loved about the Milwaukee Bucks. So that's when I first started becoming a Bucks fan. It was damn near 12 years ago, 14 years ago at this point. Um, but yeah, so that's my favorite team now. That's one of the teams that I love. That's in the toppest tier for me. I would damn near argue that's my favorite team. The only thing that they did to disappoint me this year, and I understand there's a lot of things from a Bucks criticism you can give about not being good at defense or hiring Doc Rivers and all that stuff. But the main thing that they did to disappoint me this year, and it's to no fault of their own, is the playing Giannis versus the Celtics and him getting hurt. It that close to the end of the year, there was no real reason to fight that hard for the second seed because either we played Indiana or we played Philly. And honestly, if we fought for the second seed, I think facing Philly was a little bit more of a problem. Yeah, I understand they lost to the Pacers, and unironically enough, I love the Pacers too. That's my other love team. Those are my top two favorite teams. But that's why it hurt a lot less. But not being able to see freak time in the playoffs, that's something I was looking forward to so much because Giannis has already solidified himself as a Hall of Fame player. He's already solidified himself as one of the best players in the league. Amazing, not just as a basketball player, but as a person. Damian Lillard, I wanted to win for Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard is one of my favorite point guards in the league. And it was so unfortunate to not get to see him and Giannis play together in the playoffs. Lillard had some good playoff games. Obviously, Chris Middleton did too. But it is what it is. So I'm going to get to start making the team. I guess since I've started talking about the teams, I could just quickly talk about how I feel about the teams now, actually. So this could become a two-part video. One would just be me talking about the teams, and then another one would be me, like, actually making the team. But there's only maybe, like, 10 teams in total. No, maybe, like, 7 that I, like, care about. Like, I have interest in what they're doing. And then the rest of them, not so much. Like, I'll give you an example. The Washington Wizards are a perfect example. It's a team that I don't hate any team other than one. And the Wizards are not one of them. I do not hate the Wizards. I don't have any malice towards them. I don't even think they're boring. I just never really had any symbolic representation to the Wizards. I've never really was a Wizards fan. Gilbert Arenas was cool. There were some cool Wizards players throughout time. But my favorite Wizards player, if I had to pick one throughout my lifetime, was probably Caron Butler. That was probably my favorite Wizards player. So I can't really say I'm a huge Wizards fan. The golden jerseys were really cool, but yeah, I'm not a Wizards fan. Getting to the Magic, I'm not a Magic fan either. Like I like the city of Orlando, but I'm personally not a Magic fan. I think their logo's cool. I think their name's cool. Back in the day, I used to really like Jameer Nelson and Rashard Lewis, and the fact that they played with Dwight, that was a really cool competing team that they had. Um, but then again, also the Magic, cool team. I don't really particularly care much about them. Charlotte used to be the Bobcats. Outside of like Crash, aka Gerald Wallace, I also don't know if I really care much about this team either. I remember in NBA Street Home Court, I used to like using Amoka Okafor, and he was on the Bobcats. I just also remember NBA Live '09, where I would take Jason Richardson for franchises, but again, I have no real connection with the Charlotte Hornets. I've never have. The only thing that I've had connection to for Charlotte was the Carolina Panthers, and I wasn't even like a full-on Panthers fan. It's just Cam Newton's the guy who got me into football, so I started watching a lot of Cam Newton. So yeah, the Hornets no, and the Miami Heat. I just hate the Miami Heat. I don't like them. I just don't like them at all. That's the one team that I genuinely can't stand. It's not Pat Riley. It's not even the players per se. It's more so just what they do to me. They hurt me in the playoffs every time, and I don't like it. There was one year, and I believe it was the bubble year, that they pissed me off because they beat Indiana, which is one of the teams that I love, by the way. They beat Milwaukee, which really pissed me off, and they beat the Celtics, which was my hometown team, all in the same fucking playoff series. Even I don't even care if the order was right about that. Maybe I was wrong between the Celtics and Bucks. Maybe I flipped those. I don't even care. Screw you. Don't like Miami. I have no hate to it's like the prior Miami teams, like the D Wade, Chris Bosh, LeBron Heat. I actually didn't even have a problem with that Miami Heat. I didn't have a problem with the Shaq and Wade Heat. I don't like as a franchise. I think the Miami Heat are perfectly fine, but just in terms of like how I feel about them now, I dislike them very much so. The Atlanta Hawks I care about. I have family in Georgia. They're Hawks fans. And personally, I do like the Hawks. They're not a team I love. They're not a team where, throughout the future I'll carry my feelings for them. They're just a team that I like where I'm like, oh, okay, I'd like to see them do good because I'd like to see my family happy. But at the end of the day, it doesn't affect me too much whether they're good or not. I'll root for them if they're playing against someone I don't really care about. But if you're facing Milwaukee or Indiana, there's no way I'm rooting for Atlanta. Spurs, again, don't really care about. I loved Tim Duncan. The Spurs have been a very successful team, but they've also just haven't really been like that interesting to me. Like when it comes to Texas, I've never been to Texas. I don't really have much care for the Mavericks, the Rockets, or the Spurs. My favorite Spurs player is probably Tim Duncan, but again, there's just not much about the Spurs I can really say I care about. And same thing with the Houston Rockets. Watching the James Harden Rockets was cool. I remember Steve Francis being there. There was some very interesting Rocket teams, but Yao Ming, Tracy McGrady. But I personally was never like a Rockets fan. I just thought they had cool players. Pelicans, damn, I don't even hate this team. This is just a team that I borderline never really had interest in, whether they were the Hornets or the Pelicans, whether it was the Chris Paul Hornets, whether it was the Peja Stojakovic. I liked David West. I did like David West. I will be honest, I like David West. But yeah, the Hornets, Pelicans, never really a huge fan of. Like I would watch them play basketball. I like them playing basketball. We're just talking about my interest in the team and the franchise itself because there are good teams that were fun to watch for all of these franchises. It's just for the Hornets and Pelicans, I never really cared much. And we all know Zion and Brandon Ingram are good. CJ McCollum's pretty cool. So is Dyson Daniels. So is I'm just calling him Caleb Murphy. Shit. Trey Murphy. Trey Murphy's good. I don't know why I want to call him Byron Murphy. I'm still in NFL mode. But anyway, yeah, just don't have a lot of love for the Pelicans. Grizzlies. I loved Rudy Gay. I liked OJ Mayo. I did like some Grizzlies players. One of my favorite players of all time, and this is going back to like the people who aren't going to be on this franchise, but in the all-time list, Zach Randolph. Love Zach Randolph. Big Zach Randolph fan. But the Grizzlies as a whole, don't really care for. The Piston, again, also don't really care for. I just loved Andre Drummond back in the day. And I also loved it when Brandon Jennings was playing there. So I used to watch the Piston a little bit. But, the Piston are not really my team. It's more of Crispy Flakes' thing. Pacers, absolutely love them. Big Pacers fan. And there's a lot I can say about a lot of these teams right now, but I think I really should kind of just get into the franchise, to be honest with you, because I've just spent 15 minutes talking about some of the teams. Um, I'll just give you a quick synopsis about what I think, and I can explain it later. But uh, don't really care for love. Don't really care for LeBron. I love though. Bulls, no, simply no. Love, don't care for outside of Steph Curry. Really cool what you did with Chris Paul. Loved Amari Stoudemire. Not a Phoenix Suns fan. Lakers, absolutely not. Kings, I actually do care for the Kings. Sabonis and Vivek Ranadive. So Sabonis obviously was one of my favorite players on the Pacers before we traded him for Tyrese Halliburton. Still love Tyrese. Still love Sabonis. Still two of my favorite players. However, the Kings. If I had to pick a team in the West that I love, it'd be the Kings. But I don't go to the West Coast often. In fact, I've only ever been there a couple times. I'm not going to pretend to be a huge Sacramento Kings fan when I do like them, but it's not my team, I wouldn't say. Clippers, don't really care for. I'm glad that they're doing good things now, but I still don't really care for. I do care for the Raptors. I have family in Toronto, and I actually do find the Raptors quite interesting. I'm kind of happy they beat the Warriors that one year. The Nets, I don't care for the Nets. The only thing I can say with the Nets is one of the coolest franchises I've ever done have in 2K16 was with the Nets. It's when I traded for Victor Oladipo before he was a superstar with the Pacers. Well, actually, let's tone it down a little bit. When he was an all-star with the Pacers, and I led a Nets team, and I played every game in that franchise, which was cool. But that has nothing to do with the actual team. The actual Nets team, I don't particularly care for. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Brook Lopez, but again, the Nets just never really were it for me. And going back to talking about teams and the correlation of 2K, the Atlanta Hawks, I was a huge, huge, huge fan of the best of my career I've ever done being with the Atlanta Hawks. It was really, really cool. It was 2K15. No, no, sorry. It was 2K16 on the Xbox 360. It was 2K16 on the Xbox 360. I made a character named Villane Johnson, who was supposed to be a point guard version of Joe Johnson. I just liked making up my own names. I chose the name Villane. I don't know. It's the name I picked. And originally, I was like a three-point sharpshooter. That's how I originally built it. It was like 6'5", three-point sharpshooter, point guard type of guy who was just meant to shoot a lot of threes and pass the ball. And then I ended up having my best friend, best my career ever, where I was able to drop like 40, 50 points a game. Um, Rookie year was more like 40, and then next year was 50. I ended up winning a championship with the Hawks. We ended up trading Paul Millsap to the Grizzlies to get Zach Randolph, because back then you could like talk about wanting to get your players traded. It was very interesting, very interesting style franchise. I mean, my career, and I loved it personally. I've been thinking about doing a my career oriented franchise at some point. Maybe I might do that with like my favorite players. Maybe I'll try that at some point. But anywho, that was my correlation with those two teams. Raptors, my favorite franchise I've ever done in NBA Live 2010 was a Raptors franchise. I won 12 out of, I want to say 16 championships. 12 out of 16. I want to say that's the correct number. Maybe it was 12 out of 14. I know we won 12 championships. I don't know if it was out of 13, 14, 16. That's the part I don't remember. It could have been damn near been 18, but I know it was. I know we won at least 12. And the very first year, the reason why I remember this franchise is I basically had a big four. So I still had hold on. Yeah, I still had Chris Bosh. I traded for Kenyon Martin, who was on the Kings at the time. I traded for Caron Butler. Gave up every pick, you only had like 4 picks at the time. You could only use like 2 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks. So I used both of my first-round picks. I used my bench players. I traded my bench players for more picks, and then somehow was able to get Caron Butler. And then the offseason came around, and I spent every single penny I had to get Michael Redd. And that was my big four. It was those 4 guys, and there was a bunch of guys that picked up on minimums. And then back then you could run an 8-man roster as your entire franchise for your entire franchise. And if someone got injured, you would just have to pick up an injury reserve. So I ran 8 players with fatigue on, but that was my 8 players, and we won the championship many years. Most of the years we were playing against the Orlando Magic to get to the finals, And then if I remember correctly, our biggest threat, at first it was Kobe, then it was oh shoot, who was it? It was someone random. Like so, yeah, we faced the Spurs a couple times. The Dirk Mavs were annoying me. The Dirk Mavs kept coming back. And the Grizzlies, no, the Grizzlies were never really that much of a challenge. Back in that day, the Thunder weren't that much of a challenge either. Neither were the Timberwolves with freaking Big Al Jefferson. I want to say, yeah, I want to say it was mostly. Oh, Phoenix. Yeah, Phoenix was there too. It was the Phoenix Suns, the Spurs, the Mavericks, Lakers, and Rockets. Yeah, those were like the five teams we kind of were like rotationally playing in the finals in that franchise. It was cool. It was annoying, but it was cool at the same time. Knicks, don't love the Knicks, but I don't really care for them either. I'm very neutral. Like I don't hate them, don't love them, don't like them. They're just a franchise. I'll play basketball with them. They're cool. Celtics, a hometown team. That's the reason why I care for them at all. I'll also, due to some linkage through my family, I care about the Celtics, but not my favorite. Philly, don't like you. You're not one of those teams that I hate and despise like the Heat. I just don't have any interest in that team. Blazers, outside of Damian Lillard, I never really cared much for the Blazers. Actually, that's a little bit of a lie. I liked LaMarcus Aldridge. Okay, now we're done. No, I'm kidding. I liked Nick Batum. I liked Wesley Matthews. The Blazers have had players I've liked. I've just never really cared too much for them as a franchise. Timberwolves, I'm not a fan of. Minnesota in general. My ex is a Minnesotan. I'm also screw the Vikings because I'm a Lions fan. But I don't have any ill will towards the Timberwolves. I just don't particularly care too much about them. I mean, I'm glad Ant Man is great, and I'm glad the Timberwolves are, making the farthest they've gone since like what was it, like 2004 or something, with Kevin Garnett. So props to the Timberwolves for winning a playoff series. Thunder, same thing. I never really liked Kevin Durant. I was just never a Kevin Durant fan. Of the big three, aka Durant, Harden, and Westbrook, I probably liked Westbrook the most. But my favorite Thunder player ever, if I had to pick one, was Serge Ibaka. So I always wanted Serge Ibaka either on Milwaukee or Indiana. Like I always loved Serge Ibaka. But yeah, I didn't really ever care for the Thunder. Going back to the Magic for a second, I felt the same about the Magic. 'Cause I never really liked the Magic, but I always liked the idea of getting Nikola Vucevic on one of my favorite teams, or Miami Heat Hassan Whiteside. Again, didn't like the Heat, but I liked Hassan Whiteside, and I loved Andre Drummond. You can notice a bit of a pattern between the type of players I used to love when I was younger. Denver Nuggets loved Kenneth Faried and Ty Lawson. I don't get me wrong, I do like Jokic. I'm not a big Nuggets fan. I'll be honest with you. I've never really been a big Nuggets fan. I think they're a cool team. I think they're fun to watch. But I feel like a lot of these teams are fun to watch. By the way, I just wouldn't say that I'm a fan of them or that I care much about them. Like as in whatever moves they do, they do. I won't get affected in the slightest. And same thing with Utah. Like if I was a kid who grew up in Utah and Laurie Markkinen was the player I inspired to be like, then alright, fine. But it's not. That's not how I grew up in life. So I wouldn't consider myself much of a Jazz fan, or a Nuggets fan, or a Thunder fan, or a Timberwolves fan, or a Blazers fan. This entire division is just kind of all right, whatever, to me. But the teams that I love are the Bucks and Pacers. The teams that I like and care for to a degree are the Raptors, the Celtics, the Hawks, the Kings, and then maybe. Actually, that might be it. And no, not the Piston. Still Crispy Flake's job. Um, yeah, no, that's it. I love Pacers Bucks. I like slash care for the Celtics, Raptors, Kings, Hawks. That's it. Just those six. So I did a Timberwolves franchise and a Grizzlies franchise on my channel already. Um, Next year when I do the franchises, I plan on getting 2K right away. I want to start with my favorite teams. The only thing is that the Celtics win the championship. Doing the Celtics is going to be really easy. Doing the Bucks is going to consider just using freak time, but actually letting them be good. Pacers, depending on how much they like Tyrese Halliburton in 2K next year, will depend on how easy that is. Raptors will take a little bit of work. Won't be too difficult though. Kings build around Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox, aka maybe move on from De'Aaron Fox. Okay, cool. We'll probably do that. We'll keep Sabonis though. The Kings Sabonis franchise will be a thing. I'm gonna call him King Sabonis. And the Hawks, depending on what they decide to do with Trae Young, will build around Trae Young if they don't move on from him. Because I like Trae Young, but I don't know if I'd call him one of my favorites. So let's get into that. Milwaukee Bucks, cool, nice. We'll have it set to play the quarters. If we decide to shorten it, we'll have normalize on in case we decide to play 6 minute quarters, which I might do. I haven't decided yet. Yeah, I'm gonna turn off all the automatic stuff. Or should I? No, yeah, no. Zero protected players, so I can actually draft my favorite players. Screw your sap calorie. Your sap calorie. Yep, your sap calorie. You know what? Screw your sap calorie. All right. I'm only gonna turn. Actually, I don't need trade override on. Originally, I turned it on thinking I was gonna have to trade for my favorite players. It's a draft. I don't have to do that. And we'll turn off injuries so we can actually play all the people we choose. How's that sound? Screw you. I don't care about any of those. I'm all set. I would like to be the new Milwaukee Bucks, please. I'll go here. Imagine I did all this monologuing just for the franchise to not work the way I want it to work. Shut up. Cool. Alright. So, time to pick my 14 favorite players of all time. AKA my 14 favorite players currently in the league. Because for my favorite players of all time, the players who aren't in this league that I made that would have been on here, I can't guarantee all 7 of these guys would have made my team, by the way. But I'm just going to tell you the 7 guys who aren't in the league who were considerations. So Kevin Garnett, 100% would have been there. Vince Carter, Zach Randolph, Sim Bular. That's because I'm Indian. That's my Indian connection right there. Same thing with the Kings and Vivek Ranadive. You know, I'm glad that he's tried to introduce basketball to Indian people. And I'm not from India specifically, but I am ethnically Indian, and I hold, as a guy who is Indian but not from India, I still hold some of the values. And someone like Sim Bular, same situation. A guy from Toronto went to play at, I believe, New Mexico. You know, he's same concept. You know, wasn't born in India, but still ethnically Indian, and you know, I kind of root for the idea that there is an owner who wants to try to get people involved. So Vivek Ranadive and Simbular are on that list for that reason. One reason why I actually do have a love for the Sacramento Kings, but more of a care for than a love, I would say. But they are my favorite team in the West, if that counts for anything. They're the only team in the West that I genuinely love / care about. So take of which what you will from that. But Simbular would have been on that list. Michael Redd would have been on that list. Monte Ellis would have been on that list. Trevor Ariza would have been on that list. I used to love Trevor Ariza. I used to think of him as like a poor man's Kevin Durant. I used to think that guy was amazing. But yeah, that's some of the players who would have been on there. And maybe when we go back and do franchises like the Kobe era / LeBron era, like we go back from the modern eras, maybe we can make a franchise with my favorite players. We could just do what if my favorite players in modern era. So you know there would be Garnett, Vince Carter, Zach Randolph. I'm hoping Simbular would be there because he played in the LeBron era. So that would be I would want him on that team. I would want Trevor Ariza on that team. Michael Redd. Michael Redd's probably more better in the Kobe era. Monte Ellis can kind of go either way to a degree because you're starting at the beginning of the era, I believe. So yeah, and then I would pick the next 7 people who I think fit that bill after that. So let's start here. Giannis Antetokounmpo, if you couldn't guess, was going to be on this team. But it's not just because of how talented he is. I've loved Giannis for a very, very long time, actually. So I was listening to a video recently where it was Flight Reacts versus someone, and that guy said Giannis Antetokounmpo was his favorite player. And, I will say this about a lot of people who say that, is that that's a very cool choice to make. Coming from a Bucks fan who's not actually born in Wisconsin, I guess you probably have more legitimacy to say that you love Giannis more than I do. But I will say one thing, though. I was completely right and completely wrong about Giannis at the same time. I actually I kind of saw Giannis becoming a star happening, but not in the way it happened. Once upon a time, I believed that Giannis and Bruno Caboclo were going to become the best two foreign players in the NBA. That they were going to have like a rivalry. And I was so unbelievably wrong about that. And I will admit that. Bruno Caboclo on the Raptors, Giannis on the Bucks. But Giannis got extremely good, like I thought. And Giannis just, his personality is so awesome. It's fun, it's legitimate. He's just a goofy, yet also kind of serious about winning guy. Like, who he is as a person, I love Giannis. And Giannis has to be on this team. There is no if or what's about it. So the first pick is going to be Giannis. Now, again, I do like Jokic. I think he's got kind of like a humble thing, too, where like he just loves his life. It's not all about basketball to him. But he's not my favorite. He's just a really, really cool player, and I think he's a good guy. Embiid's cool, but he's not one of my favorites. Luka's awesome, but he's not one of my favorites either. Shay's cool, not one of my favorites, though. Now, LeBron, I think LeBron is the best player of all time, personally. I think he's better than Jordan. I'm one of those people. I never actually saw Jordan play. And the whole Jordan played in a plumber league bullshit, I don't buy that. Because even if LeBron had, more competition and Jordan supposedly had less, it still doesn't make what he did easy, in my opinion. LeBron's good and better in a lot of like different categories, but LeBron also plays a lot more positions. He's played everywhere from point guard to power forward. Jordan was just a really great scoring shooting guard. So don't get me wrong, I get the whole Jordan's the GOAT or whatever conversation, but I'm way more on LeBron. And I love LeBron too because I had a decent relationship with my dad, but LeBron being like, oh, I want to maybe play with my kid one day. I don't know if there's any player who's ever had that determination to do something like that. And LeBron's just so, like, just watching like his little videos of him just being a goofy guy, loving basketball with his family, his story with Savannah. It's just such a good guy. And I like his shoes. Like, LeBron's just a guy I like. Now, I'll be honest with you. He's played with teams that I haven't given a shit about in my life. I'll be honest. I don't care for the Lakers in any way, shape, or form, or the Cavs, or the Heat. In fact, I hate the Heat. But if I can like LeBron despite all that, then LeBron has to be one of my favorite players. At least one of my top 14, I might say. I'm going to come back to Steph Curry because I like Steph Curry a lot. I don't know if he's one of my top 14 favorite, but I do like Stephen Curry. Tatum, I like you, but you're not one of my favorites. Same thing with Brunson. And I would have to think about Sabonis. That's my favorite center in the NBA. I miss when he was with the Pacers. I absolutely miss it. But him in Sacramento, it's a good fit. Him next to De'Aaron Fox, I think it's kind of good that he got a new opportunity. And personally, I need me some Sabonis. Absolutely love Sabonis. Paul George. Now, as a Pacers fan, losing Paul George hurt. It hurt a lot. And there was a time where I used to think that Paul George could compete with the best players in the NBA and that he would be one of the best. And Paul George is always amazing. I love watching his podcasts. I love his stories. I love when he was younger, when he would talk about growing up playing against older people who were bigger, stronger, and faster than him, and then how that was his way of getting better. Because that was always my route to getting better, too, because I always played multiple positions as well. Then they made me play center, even though I was kind of like a Bam Adebayo, where I wasn't like the tallest center, but I got a lot of rebounds, I got assists, and I kind of did a little bit of everything, but I wasn't like the best of the best. But I liked Paul George. Paul George was always there. I was very hurt when he got traded the first time. Not because the Pacers decided to trade him, but because he talked about how he wanted to go and play in LA and that he was going to go there regardless if he got traded up for or not. Then he got traded for and then didn't go to LA. So, in theory, the Pacers actually didn't have to trade him in the first place. But everything worked out. So, Paul George will be on the team, but I'm going to come back and pick him. I passed by a certain player for a reason, but that's because I want to get to this guy first. Tyrese Halliburton. Love Tyrese Halliburton. Next to Damian Lillard, Tyrese Halliburton's my favorite point guard in the NBA. I liked him with the Sacramento Kings. I just didn't watch him as much because I didn't really get to watch much of Sacramento games. But watching him with Indiana has been super fun this year. Love his personality. Love how much he talks about, his roots from Milwaukee. And I love his competition against the Bucks too. I like how there's like this little pseudo rivalry thing they got going on. Love it. Give me Tyrese Halliburton. And speaking of point guards, I gotta get Damian Lillard. The hell is Damian Lillard? Hey, I turned injuries off, man. Don't tell me you have him listed as a shooting guard. I'm going crazy. Where the hell is Damian Lillard? Uh, Lillard. A B C D E F G H I J K. Why is he not here? I don't know why he's not here, but I'm just gonna trade for him. Okay, well I'll just trade for Damian Lillard, I guess, at some point. Because for whatever reason he just don't want to be here, I guess. There's no way 2K decided to make Damian Lillard's overall like an 80, right? No way, right? I'm just making sure. I'm not like stupid, am I? Yeah, they wouldn't be this disrespectful. Okay, yeah. I don't know why Damian Lillard's not here, but I'm just gonna trade for him. But Damian Lillard would be on his team. Long story short, watched him a lot with Portland. Uh, was one of my favorite point guards in the league, just in general. And I love his tenacity. I love his like fight against all will style, even when it looks like he's out. So I'll just trade for him. But long story short, I am gonna go get him. I'm just gonna take Paul George now. Then my next favorite player I'm gonna go to is Jalen Brown. It's a little confidential. I can't really explain to you the actual reason why he's one of my favorite players, but I will say this much: he's the only NBA player on this who's going to be on this team that I've had a genuine conversation with. Guy didn't know me, and that's okay. Doesn't need to know me. He's one of the only players I've ever actually talked to that are on the current list. Now, I've talked to a few NBA players before in my life because I've gone to TD Garden a bunch of times, and players come to the box sometimes, and I used to get box seats. But I will say this much: I like Jalen Brown a lot. Also, the correlation to the fact that he used to be roommates with Jared Goff, who is my quarterback for the Detroit Lions. Also, a cool little side note: Jalen Brown is that Celtic that when he got drafted by the Celtics, I wanted the Celtics on draft night to take him, and I know it was a little rough at first, but he got to the hangs of it, and I'm kind of glad that he kind of blossomed and became this really good player. I still love Jalen Brown. It's one of my favorites. I'm taking Jalen Brown. All right, who's next on the list? Who's next? Guess who's next? Next. Guess who's next? Next. So one of the players who are on this list is someone no one would expect. I'm kind of gonna just hit it with it now. Where you at, bro? Where they at, though? Um, well, that's awkward. How come I can't find some of my players that I'm looking for? No, absolutely not. Hate Max Strus. Other reason why I don't like Cleveland. They signed Max Strus. Alright, well, you know what? I can't find another person I'm looking for. GG's, I guess. But you know what? That's okay. What am I doing? Oh, now I'm looking at names. I'm just confusing myself. I'm making this way more complicated than it needs to be. Anywho, so that's two players I now need to trade for because two of them I can't find. That's awkward. Let's just start getting more people that I would consider my favorite players. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, get your tucker by the toe, da 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 da. Ooh, okay. I see a lot of guys I like, but I can't find the guys I'm looking for. Oh, I love Mike Conley. I actually do really like Mike Conley. I'm not even lying about that one. Okay. Well, for some reason, I can't find some of the guys I'm looking for. So I'm just going to start drafting the ones that I can find faster. Alright, so we're going to take DeMar DeRozan. Used to love Raptors DeMar DeRozan. Okay, so give me DeMar. Give me LaMelo. Give me Trey. Yeah, no, I generally can't find some of the guys I'm looking for. This is weird. I put for no guys to be protected, and I still can't find some of them. Wonder if I could just draft Luca and trade for Damian Lillard. I still can't find some of the guys I'm looking for. Two of them I know I can't find. The other two I must just be blind because I just haven't seen them yet, I guess. I like Scotty, but I wouldn't really consider him to be on my top 14. I love Colin Sexton, but I wouldn't really consider him to be my top 14 either. I love Denny Advia, but I wouldn't consider him to be my top 14. Yeah, give me Mike Conley, it's fine. At this point, I can't even find who I'm looking for anyway. I like Josh Hart. I like Colin Sexton. I mean, at this point, I would take Hart and Sexton. I would even take Scotty too, I guess. Give me that dog in him and Scotty Barnes. I mean, Colin Sexton. Why did I say Scotty Barnes? Because I've looked at Scotty Barnes like 5 times. Give me Josh Hart. He's got that heart in him. And then give me something I can use to trade for Damian Lillard. Give me someone who makes like $60 million. What, is that too much to ask for? It is. It's a lot to ask for, actually. Closest thing is Kevin Durant. I'll just take Luca. Luca's not even one of my favorites. I mean, he's great. This franchise doesn't look anything like what it was supposed to, by the way. I'm quite definitely missing some players I'm looking for. So, just letting you know now, some of these guys are getting dealt practically immediately. Alright, hold on. Hold on there, bunny boy. Yeah, I don't know why Dame just wasn't there, but I need Dame, please. You can just have Luca. Well, unironically, Middleton would have been on my team too, but I couldn't find him either. I can give you Mike Conley. I do like Conley. Would Conley be here? I do like Conley. What do you mean you're not interested? I mean, I'm Milwaukee too. Here, have a Milwaukee pick, unironically. Here, have a second round pick. I have a future first round pick. You guys have like no picks. Just take my trade. Alright, cool. Okay. So as a bonus, I have Giannis DeRozan. They're supposed to be here. You. I can trade Josh Hart and Sexton for the other 2 guys I was looking for. I mean, I'm definitely overpaying for one of the guys I wanted. I will be honest with you. I do like Harrison Barnes. That's not what I'm looking for, though. I know where one of them is. Am I just forgetting who one of the other guys I was looking for was? Because I remember I made a list. I was like, these are definitely my favorite players. And I know it. Oh, another one of them's on the Pacers. Did I just miscount? I do like Anthony Edwards, but that's not who I was looking for. Okay, I miscounted then. No, I'm just stupid. I know where he is now. All right. Well, first let's go get my boy on the Pacers. Ben Shepherd. I would like Ben Shepherd, please. You guys can have Josh Hart. Now, I do really like Josh Hart, by the way. I do actually like Josh Hart. But Ben Shepherd's very, very important to me. Colin Sexton does have that dog in him. But you're not Ben Shepherd. Yeah, I call him Sexton. I just because I like his last name is Sexton, but that's really about it. And then Josh Hart, I'm going to trade you to get the last guy I'm looking for on my team, who is going to be on the Celtics. On the Celtics, please. Now, my two favorite Celtics players currently, not being Kevin Garnett, obviously, who's not current, is Jaylen Brown and Drew Holiday. I'd like Drew Holiday, please. Look, I don't give two dicks if you think you're a championship contender. I really do not care. I didn't ask. Hey, Celtics, I still didn't ask. Come on. Stop being stupid. Give me Drew Holiday. You know what, Drew? You left my Milwaukee Bucks, and you got traded, and I still love you, but I'm just not going to trade for you anymore. I'm not dealing with this crap. Instead, I would like Andre Jackson Jr., please, who is another player who I actually genuinely like too, by the way. But I really like Josh Hart, though. Do I like Josh Hart enough to keep him on this team? Low-key, I do. I do really like Josh Hart. A lot of point guards on this team is the only problem, though. Way too many point guards. Curry, Halliburton, Lillard, LaMelo, Trae Young. Some of these players are just really good, though. Like, if I had to say top 10, I'd probably say Sabonis, Giannis, LeBron, Paul George, Brown, Middleton, Shepard makes 7, Halliburton makes 8, Lillard makes 9. If I had to pick a 10th guy, it would probably be... It's between LaMelo and DeRozan for 10, if we were doing my top 10 favorites. But anywho, I love Drew. I genuinely do love Drew. I also really like Andre Jackson Jr. too. This was a pick I was really excited that the Bucks made. But I don't know if I'm going to be able to get him on this team. Like, low-key, I think I like Josh Hart just a little bit more. More so his play style. I have a friend who I think plays exactly like Josh Hart, by the way, when we go to the courts. It's really funny. But I think Josh Hart's awesome. But I really love Andre Jackson Jr. Yeah, no, I love Andre Jackson Jr. more than I love Josh Hart, if I'm being honest. And I said I was going to get my favorite players, not the best players. If I looked at the NBA, is there any player who I think, oh, that guy should be on my team, who isn't on my team right now? Let me see. No. I like Siakam, but I wouldn't put him over any of these guys. Again, I like Miles Turner, but I don't think I'd say I like him more than... Well, maybe Miles Turner should be on this team, actually, now that I think about it. Maybe I do want Miles Turner, actually. I like Brook Lopez, but I wouldn't put him on the team over those guys. Same thing with Denny Adbia. Same thing with Mike Conley. I like Mike Conley, but I wouldn't put him on the team. Benedict Mathurin, I wouldn't put him over these guys. Like, if this was like a top 20, then I could add Benedict Mathurin, Brook Lopez, Miles Turner, and some other guys. But it's a top 14. And then Shepard and Andre Jackson Jr. are going to be reserves anyway. Maybe I'd give up DeRozan for Miles Turner, actually. I do really like Miles Turner. Miles Turner, Ben Shepard, Tyrese Halliburton are my 3 favorite players on the Pacers. But who would I give up in that situation? Not roster construction wise, but like genuine wise. I love Ben Shepard. I love too much, and Andre Jackson Jr. I love these 2 rookies too much. It might be DeMar though, because DeMar, I loved the Raptors. DeMar DeRozan. Once he went to the Spurs, I didn't particularly watch him as much, and with the Bulls, he still has a lot of cool games. He's still a cool player, but I don't think. I think maybe DeRozan's one of those guys I've watched a lot in my life, but maybe I'm not as big of a fan of. But I just know I liked watching him play. Like Kyrie, same thing. I loved watching him play, but I wouldn't particularly say he's my favorite. I'd say there's significantly way bigger Kyrie fans out there. Like, I like Aaron Nesmith. I like Benedict Mathurin. But I think Miles Turner when Miles Turner got drafted, I was a big happy camper. I liked Miles Turner a lot out of Texas. Uh, yeah, I'll do that. You're not interested. I beg to differ. I think you're extremely interested, actually. Okay, so looking at the team right now, we got Curry, Jalen Brown, LeBron James, Giannis, Sabonis, Paul George, Damian Lillard, Tyrese Halliburton, LaMelo, Trey Young, Chris Middleton, Miles Turner, Andre Jackson Jr., and Ben Shepherd. That's my team of my favorite players. Uh, and we're gonna get our own coach because I don't know what the hell coach that is, but I ain't my coach. Ah. Uh, Coach plan? That's not where I go. Where's staff? I just don't. I do so many Madden franchises. I don't do enough 2K franchises. I low key kind of forget what my stuff is. My staff. Uh, Front office. Head coach. There we go. Uh, I'm gonna fire you, and I'm just gonna make a new coach. I'm gonna make me as a coach. Actually, I'm gonna make a Saj Mahal as a coach. I don't know. Find one with some badges. Are those like bronze badges? Or are those like bad badges? Damn! Look at all your badges, Mr. Stoffer. If I sign you, I have no money. And also, I'm gonna just make me anyway. Can I give myself badges? Alright, you know what? Corey Bass, you're the new Saj Mahal now. Hey, don't be greedy. Take your 4.5 mil and call it a day. Aw. Okay, well, he's being greedy.